It is 6:30 and we are on the air. Can everybody hear me? Jose? Are the mics on?
You got
Should
two
be,
back
yes.
there, okay? Okay.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order for the Village of Wellington Equestrian Preserve Committee, and let's start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So tonight is a workshop meeting. We don't have any official business or agenda items that we have to address, and no public hearing. Thank you, though, for coming to listen to us. The main topic tonight is to review all of the feedback we got in March. But before we do that, as a reminder, just to remind us all where we are, January, we went through our plan of action and came up with 3 topics we wanted to address for this year. And they were livestock waste removal, which I think is going to be on every agenda for the rest of time. One of our prior Equestrian Preserve Committee members said it's Groundhog Day. So I think that's how we're going to think about that. But I don't know that it'll be solved, but hopefully we'll get some better things to do with it. We wanted to address working with the Education Committee and introducing the schools to the horse community and the industry. And Rachel and Carlos and I went to the Education Committee, and I don't know, maybe we'll wait for Carlos to hear what's happened since then. And the third issue was a state of the industry report, some sort of tracking mechanism to see how the horse sports, polo, dressage, and jumping are faring year to year. So we'll talk about that. Carlos, that's all right. I'm going to back up. I'm going to back up. You're right there.
Champion.
I saw that too. Congrats. Thank you. I was just going over the 3 topics that we were going to tackle for the agenda, for the plan of action, and I had just touched on the equestrian partnership with the Education Committee. And I don't have, Mike, have we heard anything back from the Education Committee, or?
I have not.
We were going to, where we left it, we were going to try to get
I don't know if you had it.
some of the families and children to come to some of the polo matches.
Right. Our community services department was going to work with the different, send a notice out to the different schools and principals. Have you heard an update on?
No.
No.
We'll follow up with community services then.
Okay. If not, we're almost done.
Right.
Yeah, we only have 3 more Sundays.
Right.
Horse show's done.
If we don't, everything moves so slowly in trying to pull everybody together, and that's just the nature of things. If we don't pull off something in the next several weeks, can we make sure to get way ahead of it so it'll happen next year?
Yes.
So that's something we have to tackle in the summertime. I know the Education Committee only meets quarterly, is that right?
Correct.
So we need to sit down with them again, or?
We'll make sure that we we coordinate with them so that we get onto the school schedule and we get something set up. So we have some definite dates and times. We can work with Carlos on trying to figure out the venue for that and how we make that happen.
Okay, so we need to keep that on this agenda.
Okay. we'll do that.
The third topic was the state of the industry and some way to track that year to year. I am not having much luck with the USEF. If we can get those horse show numbers, that would tell us a lot. Does anybody else have a good contact with USEF?
I do.
You do?
President, Marie Kessler?
That's what we need. So can you talk to him? What we're looking for is horse show entries, jumping, dressage. It doesn't have to be broken down by at all, really, just the number of entries
Each year,
each year.
going back.
As much as they want to do, but going forward is what's really important.
Okay.
We have, and I don't know. I'm sure he will know. He can search by zip codes, but it's, for example, in the dressage world, there's Wellington, there's also Loxahatchee, and I would put them together.
Or white fences.
White fences, polo, I don't know, and then I don't know how, we got to go to the Polo Association to track.
That I have a contact too.
So this sounds like it's turning into your project. Do you mind?
Everybody. Yeah. I'm surprised you have a contact there.
At the USPA? Oh, yeah, right? Exactly. All right.
Do you mind tackling that? It's not going to be hard
I
with the
will-
right person.
I will attempt to
Thank
tackle
you.
it. Yes.
Okay, all right, so
I
that's
would
going
just think, as far as going back in information, I think it would be fair to say that we probably just need to go back enough so that we can see the trend going forward.
So do
So
you
if
want to
you-
do it from the recession on? Do you want to do it from like 2007 right before and then?
whatever
like,
they can get. I
Well,
mean,
obviously, the perfect information would be something prior to recession and then through it.
yeah.
Right.
If that's not possible, then just pick it up after and we'll come forward from there. But yeah, that
You
recession would happen.
well, you'd think once somebody's in their database, they could
Yeah.
get it all.
And polo, I'm presuming you want all levels.
Yes. You know, we did the economic impact study.
Do you want Port Mayaca too?
Does anybody go to Port Mayaca and not Wellington?
Yes.
So no.
And are based here. Based in
Oh, they are
Wellington,
based
play
here,
in
and
Port
they
Mayaca.
only play in Port
And
Mayaca.
people based in Port Mayaca and play there. So it's a combination.
You would know best.
I would include it because I think people do consider it part of the
Yeah.
review.
Yeah.
They go back and forth.
Just as long as there's not a big batch that are only in Port Mayaca.
No. Okay.
They're all
So
coming
them are
down here.
Wellington.
Mayaca's also pretty new
Yeah.
in terms of numbers.
Does Port
Yeah, this is the
Mayaca-
year that they
This
have
is the
been
year
the
they have
most,
the
yeah.
most, so.
Does Port Mayaca affect the economy in Wellington?
Well,
Because they're
yeah,
not
because-
playing here, they're playing there instead?
Well, there is no economy in Port Mayaca, right?
No,
So,
right.
and the majority of the people.
Obviously, you haven't been there.
And,
It's in the middle of nowhere.
and as I said, a lot of the horses and grooms and everything are stabled and housed and everything here in Wellington.
Okay.
So, but they're not, their entry fees kind of thing are to that club and not to like IPC or, you know.
I see them all turning left off of Binks Forest onto Southern in the mornings,
Yeah, right.
one after another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to you tell us about the Port Mayaca, but I'm looking at how does that affect the Wellington economy?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
I'm playing here the 22 goal, right? I have 14 members, God knows how many grooms, everything playing there. And the son of my Hall of Fame polo player is 10 years old, -1 goal, and I thought it would be fun to joke around and say, let's enter a 6-goal tournament in Port Mayaca so I can say I played with this kid who's going to be 10 goals. So we took our whole crew and everything and our horses and whatever and truck out there and go to Port Mayaca just to play. But all those horses, all those everything, the grooms, the this, the that, the dollars are being spent in Wellington at the end of the day. And and the stabling of the horses and everything, they're all based here.
So the Port Mayaca times that you go out, people that go out to play there, it's just another venue.
It's
in a
just
way.
another venue. It's like
So it's-
playing at IPC, which is only high goal, or versus playing at Grand
So
Champions.
we'll just look at it as a venue
versus-
then.
it's
has
exactly.
nothing. Okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
But unlike Grand Champions, which has, for their own, that houses horses really for their teams, Port Mayaca does have what they call club barns. So you do have some players that stable there, but they also will play other places than Port Mayaca. They'll come to Wellington and
Right.
play a 12-goal here. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all about just kind of stabling. So they do overlap, very
Okay.
much so,
So when we get the information, we'll just look at it as a venue,
as a venue.
as
Yeah.
a venue to the polo system.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've already done the economic impact study, and we can't update that every year. But if we can get these numbers year to year, it's sort of a stripped down version of the numbers here, and nobody has them. You ask for it, and people say, "Oh, it's a good year." Well, how do you know? Well,
By the traffic, it looks like it.
right, right. So thank you very much, Annabelle.
The intent then would be that we would have year over year, not only for local, but also at the, if not regional, national level, so we have a kind of frame of reference, a comparison.
We can. What we're talking about now is just local.
Just local, but it'd be great if we could see versus country as a whole, or at least, you know, region, East Coast or something.
Annabelle, are you hearing this?
Sorry. It'd be great if besides local, we could also get ideally regional and also national. So year over year comparison, so we could say, okay, if we're up 10%, but national's up 5%, now I can feel a lot better about our performance. But if we're up 5 and national's up 10, why are we lagging? You know, is there something going on that is happening at a national level that we're not doing?
Well, I think maybe the ultimate comparison will not maybe necessarily be national, because, you know, there's a lot.
Dominate.
Well, it's not that
Least
we
in-
dominate. I just think that there are a lot of places to go. It's the same with polo, right?
Right.
Everybody's here in the winter. There are not that many places to go.
Right?
In the summertime, there are a lot of different places to go. So, you know, numbers fall off. I want to try a different show. I wanted this. I wanted that. But what I would say is maybe a much more interesting comparison are the numbers for here versus Ocala,
Great.
because that's, I think, the real competition in the wintertime is, you know, as they build up, what, you know, is that.
I guess, so maybe said a better way from my standpoint is simply, let's be sure as we do this that we get the relevant kind of point of reference, so we have a gauge on our performance versus whatever that relevant comparison would be, you know, in show jumping.
I mean, if we, in show jumping in particular, I mean, the one place that people are, the rumors that is also competition for show jumping is Spain. So a lot of the Europeans have not been coming because the prize money in Spain is getting a lot better, and hence they don't have to travel across the ocean. They can just travel down there. Obviously, that's not USEF, but maybe in that thing they've been tracking something like that for all we know. But I can only ask.
It'd be great if we
Yeah.
could have the frame of reference so we know how to evaluate our numbers. That's
Okay.
other than just, you know, year over year we're improving or not improving.
The only competition that we have between December 1st and April is Wellington because of the weather.
Right.
So to compare nationally is very difficult because all the players come down here because it's the only place that they can play in the wintertime. And from here, they all go back to their local club. So they can either go to Kentucky or Chicago or to Europe or
So
California.
the
Or
question I'm really trying to get at is, if you compare our performance year over year to the relevant other parts, regions, so like the Northeast in the summer is up this, and for show jumping, right? Or you guys help solve it, but I'm saying that something other than just looking at ourselves, because if we look at ourselves, we're not really understanding how we're doing versus venues, you know, alternative venues, and not necessarily competitive, but just you know, a broader frame of reference.
Well, let's start simply, because we don't have anything at the moment.
Then
But maybe nationally, regionally, maybe more work than we can
I'd be
handle.
thrilled to get
Yeah.
national, and national for, you know, so us during our season versus national for the entire year. So you smooth out the seasonality and you say, here's what's going on in polo nationally, year over year. Here's what happened in Wellington seasonally, year over year. Or same with show jumping, or the hunter jumpers, if you will. You don't like it?
no, it's not that I don't like it. I see it very difficult to compare apples to lemons. And that's what you're doing. Because here you get everybody. And from here, everybody goes back to their local clubs, which may be, in Chicago, they may have 5 polo fields, let's say. In Kentucky, they may have 4. In Santa Barbara, California, they may have 8. And then San Diego, California, they may have 5.
Which is why, as Jane said, if we look nationally, you know, what's national year over year is up 5%. We were up in our season year over year 10%. I would think now I've got a frame of reference that says I can feel good about it. I'm just looking for what's a relevant frame of reference, and I think we need to have that.
It's tricky with polo though, because it's so
Tricky in
international
everything.
here. Well, jumping's probably, and dressage is the easiest. You can say USDF, what are the numbers like for the year across the country?
Yeah.
That's pretty easy. And then what are our numbers like for the year? That's pretty easy. Just
And then
to
it's USPA tournaments versus not USPA tournaments, so they don't track the non-USPA
right.
tournaments, and I mean,
And let me interrupt real quick. This is tonight is not a public hearing, so we're not going to be hearing from the audience. We had a big public hearing in March, but thank you all for coming and listening. So that's the tricky part. Is polo? Is it up for the world or is it down for the world? And where are we in comparison? And I don't know how you
Be
get a
thrilled
hold
to
of
limit
that.
it to the hunter jumper world, or hunter jumper and dressage. Just so that at least for some parts of what we're looking at, we have a frame of reference.
Yeah, let's see which numbers we get and then use what we get.
Go for there.
I just don't see where you're going to get it, but if you could, it'd be wonderful, but.
Yeah.
Well, if we can get to you.
The USDF was willing to
US
give me stuff. The guy just never got back to me. But when he first offered, he says, yeah, because it's public record, according to George Williams. So I should be able, I didn't know we were going to talk about it tonight, so I didn't bug him. I'll bug him again.
Well,
But,
and
yeah.
and the right IT person could take them 5 minutes on their computer.
Yeah, no, like George Williams seemed to
Yeah.
say the USDF would be more than happy to give us that stuff.
Okay. So you're going to tackle USDF?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
No, I have a contact already there,
Okay,
and he
so
did
keep
get
going.
back to me,
All right.
but then he never really got back to me.
Okay. Thank you.
okay, so I'm just doing the horse show and polo.
Okay. Okay. So that's any other feedback from you on that particular challenge? Okay. So that's moving along. Two other things before we get into review of our March meeting. We had if you recall, we had that meeting in March, and the day after the meeting, we had an accident on Pearson Road, and literally, and one of our former members, Kathleen Gannon, some of you new members would not have remembered, but she brought up Pearson Road when she was on the committee, and she took it upon herself to come see the city manager and Mike this afternoon with some ideas that she'd gotten from herself and from talking to other people in the showgrounds. And she, the suggestions include, the top one was the one that got the most discussion, and that was to install some sort of new, somewhat raised surface, and this is the Pearson Road crossing at the horse show, which gets the most traffic. Some sort of rubberized or...
Pearson Road at South Shore, correct? Or Pearson Road?
Did I say South Shore? No, Pearson at the horse show.
And the horse show, okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that
okay.
that blinking light that gets all that traffic.
Okay.
Some sort of raised, perhaps rubberized, perhaps painted differently, textures so the horses don't slip. Perhaps doing something with rumble strips approaching from either direction. Perhaps additional light indicators that crossing is alive. Paul Schofield was already working on it, and he heard some of her suggestions, is going to follow up on that. But he made the good suggestion, and we all heard this at the March meeting too, which is we maybe ought to think about, I don't know if it's a resolution or a request or some sort of official move by this committee that goes to the council or to the village or whoever is appropriate. So in this case, it would be a request from this committee to proceed on improving that crosswalk along with the other crosswalks. And I'm looking for, and Mike, I need a little help on housekeeping
Okay.
here. What's the official move we can make to make that point to the council?
So the presentation that was made this afternoon to us was this, as Jane had indicated, some kind of slightly raised surface or some methodology for directing the driver to this, this crossing is coming up. So alerting them to that beyond just the lights that are there. And maybe even improving on the lights that are there. Understanding that this is a mid-block crossing. It's not a stop situation for the drivers. It is a through situation for the driver. And this is a scenario where the crossing that's there, the buttons and the things to activate it need to be activated by the person crossing. So, so that's part of what we're trying to look at, is how to highlight that for those who are using that on a regular basis. We also have we said about 5 other mid-block crossings throughout the community. Greenbrier Boulevard, I think, has
Has two or three, yeah.
on them as well. And there's another one further east on Pearson Road as well. So, and what we've noticed is that many of the equestrians are not paying attention at all. They're just coming through. We see them on their horses, texting, on the phone. The horse knows where it's going, and the rider is free to do whatever they want to do, but they're not stopping. And so we've seen this on a number of occasions. Ms. Gannon also highlighted that there had been some non-reported incidences as well. So we'll take a look at how we might be able to highlight these crossings with both the equestrians and with the drivers, vehicle drivers. So highlighting it with a raised section with maybe some rubber mats, and we were provided some ideas of some thoughts of what these mats might look like, and we'd be able to pass those around if you'd like to see
Can
them.
I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because, I mean, I understand what Kathleen's trying to do in terms of, you know, the safety. Horses with metal shoes on asphalt, if anything goes wrong, is not a pretty situation. So that I understand. However, I think that is a completely fundamentally different issue than the actual crosswalk where, you know, having been a driver in that situation, and you and I had kind of spoken about that, the riders and the golf cart and the grooms and the golf cart drivers all think they have right of way when they push that button. And nobody actually really knows. I mean, I certainly didn't we kind of grant them that privilege as horse people, but as far as I understand, not everybody, a yellow light is not a red light, and so therefore, you know, we're being just kind of, you know, well, I'm a horse person, so therefore. And so I think if we're going to tackle the situation, it has to be not just tackled with footing, it has to be tackled with either a true stop or you know, some kind of, you know, access that everybody knows who has right of way and when, not just because I push a button and I say so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that, you know, so it kind of goes a little bit of both ways. I mean, and FYI, at the horse show, they have a no texting and riding rule, and they will pull your show qualifications if you're caught doing that. And there's no reason why that can't be extended, in my opinion, to, you know, when you're, because it is dangerous. It's super dangerous. So.
Well, you can put in the bridle path, 50 feet before the horse crossing. No telephone will be allowed while you're riding your horse or taking your horse. You know, sometimes you see the grooms, one hand holding the horse and the other hand their phone.
Yep.
So 50 feet from the crossing, just put no telephones allowed.
Yeah, but no one listens to that.
Well, at least you're warning them.
Well, I think the focus of the conversation we had today was to provide some additional safety, if we could, where possible, to improve the safety from both the pedestrian horse crossing scenario and the driver scenario, just to alert them of what's coming up. So the things that we were talking about was the material you see in front of you here. We were also looking at some of the signage and things we could do to improve that. So the recommendation that I think Mr. Schofield was asking for from this committee was, would you like to recommend that we as staff take a look at these options and come back with some recommendations to you and provide you that those would then be forwarded on to council for improvements to those.
And
those
while we're at it, my apologies. We need to recognize we've got Councilman Michael Napoleon in the room. Thank you for joining us. And so let's ask you, if we have a directive that we want you all to know about it, is it a recommendation coming from this committee? Okay. All right. So what does everybody think about making a recommendation that the village pursue improvements of these crossings.
I think the way Michael framed it made a lot of sense, which is to ask the staff to kind of do the deeper dive, if you will, into evaluating sort of the alternatives and come back with a recommendation. Did I hear it right?
Right.
Is that a motion for a recommendation?
Unless there's other input or discussion.
Just to put over the road when the horses cross?
Well, we need to explore it. They need to price it. They need to make sure it is satisfactory to the Department of Transportation, so on and
The
so forth.
information here talks about the horses, but it doesn't talk about cars going over it, so I
But
don't
they've got some
know.
work
Yeah,
to
that
do.
would be the biggest thing.
And what we were told, which we have not seen, but we were told that this product, and I understand there are other products, so this was just a product that was presented to us today. So I wouldn't get too
Hung up on
the product at this
Okay.
point. But we were told that this product exists at the showgrounds. It's just inside the gate as you cross over from going from Grand Prix Village, coming out of Grand Prix Village and going into the showgrounds. That's where this is located. So it would receive a bunch of traffic.
Yeah.
Apparently,
Excuse me,
people
but
drive
I
over
have
it all the
not seen
time.
it.
Is it possible, even if you're waiting for this, to put speed bumps in before and after, or the rumble strips?
We did
which
talk about the
seem
rumble
reasonable?
strips. Yes, we did. We talked about rumble
So
strips.
something
And we
quickly.
talked about some additional signage that would be up that would say, this is, I'm thinking about the pedestrian, you have to push the button, or this is a yield situation to
Right,
those,
at
and that's
least
really what we're
Somebody
looking
to
for.
That
Who
can
has
be-
right of way?
Right, it's a
right?
yield
Who has-
situation to.
And that can be done
Right.
in a timely fashion,
Right.
and then this could be done at a
Or
later
even
date
with a
even.
sign for the horse
Yeah.
crossing, whatever, you do not have right of way.
Right.
Something that's like, traffic does not have to stop.
No, I would agree
A
with you.
sign like that.
I agree with your assessment that most equestrians think, at this point,
They can just
I push the button, I get to go.
well, it is pushing the button as long as the lights are flashing and things. I mean, as a pedestrian, let's put it this way. As a pedestrian in a crosswalk, you have the right of way, okay? That's a given.
Oh, so we could just,
But you have, in a mid-block crossing, which is
Zebra.
what this is, this is a mid-block crossing. In a mid-block crossing, you need to activate the light. At an intersection, such as Pearson and South Shore, that's an intersection point, and as a pedestrian, you have the right-of-way to cross when the light is in your favor.
can
So-
you say something, could you put zebra strips there and put a sign that says when lights are flashing, pedestrian, it becomes a pedestrian kind of, can it be like
Well,
a
I'm-
combination?
Yes, but I'm not trying to make it a paragraph, because I don't think anybody's going to read that, but,
No.
But Mike, when you push the button and it tells you it's your right to go, they're telling they're also putting the red light on the cars to stop.
No, there's no red light scenario on a
Yellow.
mid-block crossing. It's a yellow light. And the yellow light is for the car now to yield to you as the pedestrian crossing the
Well-
mid-block area. That's what's going on.
And we're looking for an accident.
Stop in this case.
Yield does
Right.
mean stop.
In this case, yes.
But I wouldn't know that as a car driver. If it was yellow, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
I mean, I would stop for a horse because that's what I would do. But I would, as an average person, I would not think yellow means stop.
But once the light has been activated and you're in the crosswalk, you as the pedestrian have the right-of-way.
Right.
Yes,
In a
I always
mid-block
thought it was
for
horses, but not for golf carts and,
but it's the same
Well,
rules for
I
people,
mean-
like people. It's
Yeah,
like a
okay.
people crosswalk.
Okay, so I'm not,
Has a horse sign next
Yeah.
to it.
you notice I didn't say horse and golf
Yeah.
cart, I said pedestrian,
Yeah.
Oh.
because that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Well, the
Okay.
pedestrian is somebody that is
Pedestrians-
walking.
Exactly, a pedestrian is not a golf cart.
It's not on a golf
That's
cart, it's
moving
not on a
vehicle.
horse.
And then
You
we're
know,
back to,
They got to use common sense.
Somebody has
It's
to
not-
yield to someone, and so in this particular case, what we're utilizing is the mid-block crossing and the state standards for mid-block crossings.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor
to explore.
to explore
I'll second it.
improvements on the horse crossings, mid-block crossings. And there are 5 or 6 of them.
Right, and and what I would suggest that we do is we do the research that was suggested to us at this meeting. We'll come back to you with some options, and we'll present those to you at the next meeting. We'll ask you for your direction, and then we'll move that forward to council.
And this is if the council could be notified that we're making this recommendation even at this point.
Sure.
Okay. Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Thank you very much. One last bit of housekeeping before we get into the notes. Just a reminder, because the season's coming to an end, we had a conversation early in the year about that this committee, everybody attend throughout the year. So anybody who's going out of town needs to come back for meetings. So
Needs to come back from meeting.
yes, I don't know how many we'll have this summer, but just a reminder for that. Okay, I took notes. I hope you all did too. We're going to go one by one through all the people that came up and talked to us and what they said and what we think about it, because I think we heard a lot of interesting things, and I hope you agree it's a fantastic event to have everybody come talk to us every year. Don't you agree?
Yes, definitely.
So you see what you can remember. I'll do my best to report what I heard, at least what I wrote down, and we're going to go person by person. This is a lot of it I wanted to respond to, but we would have been there all night if we'd gotten into conversation on every single topic. So that is what tonight is about. And I'm going to start with Michael Whitlow, who lives on Appaloosa Trail. And his main point, had to do with Mark Bellissimo's commitment to improve Pearson and South Shore and to extend the back entrance of the horse show to Gracita Way with the exit to Lake Worth. And this is in this, what I heard, and you all let me know if you heard something else. But again, this could be another recommendation coming from this committee. We've been left out of this conversation. It comes to the council every year, and we might want to have an opinion about it. It'll come again next year. Everything we're talking about, especially when we've talked about this Pearson Road crossing, it'd be a big impact to that crossing if all the traffic could get out the south side of the horse show, like it was promised to be. So, thoughts?
I think that would be a great recommendation, because if you solve that, this has been the second time people have brought it up. I think if anything from that meeting gets done, that would be the most important thing that would get done, because it solves a ton of problems that we talk about on a regular basis, including the South Shore Pearson traffic. And so once that's solved, we can reevaluate everything else, and those things can come later.
But legally, can Wellington do anything? I mean, the way it was presented at that meeting was he did the drug thing and
The
pulled that opioid
crisis.
card and
Wow.
It relates to the emergency.
State of emergency.
Right.
State of emergency
So-
signed by the governor.
so we can't really override that, right?
No, we can't.
Yeah.
It's the question of whether or not we have a new governor, and whether or not there'll be states of emergency issued that involve the entire state now.
Has it been lifted, the old one, or not yet?
No, I mean, he still has his ability. Yeah, governor has executed those, but under the new, I mean, this has been going on for the last 3 years. So every year there's been a state of emergency that has affected the entire state, when in fact, as you know, some of like Hurricane Michael, as an example, affected the Panhandle greatly, but not South Florida. So
But isn't it up to the council to grant that permit? And I'm going to ask Councilman Napoleon, since you're here. You're never going to come back. The question is the annual permits that Equestrian Sport Productions gets for the events, for the venues, that's tied to the South Shore and Pearson Road improvements and the extension of Gracita Way, the horse show entrance to Gracita Way to Lake Worth.
We have an option to grant the permit or not grant the permit. If we don't grant the permit, there's no horse show. We decided we don't want to do that. So we don't have a lot of leverage over the horse show owner, because we're not allowed to make him post a bond to do those improvements. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with what we can actually do as far as leverage. We cancel a horse show. I don't think anybody wants that. That's really our leverage.
So I think the council right now, yes, because obviously the owner or applicant hasn't performed the required improvements that are required for the type of development that he has. So each year, until those improvements are done, there'll be a special use permit going back to council for their review and comment on. But the out has been, for him at this point, has been the state of emergency that's been issued on an annual basis.
So-
Is there a middle ground, something
So
like?
I was just going to say, I
Fine.
think I have a middle ground, but I don't know what our leverage is with the middle ground.
Okay.
There is a road that goes out the back. It's dirt road. The horses use it, grooms walk, anybody who's in walking distance, you walk your horses through this back road. There is a space for golf carts to go through, and then right next to that, there is a gate. That gate is always locked. So technically, there is a road that many people would use, whether paved or not paved, to go through to Lake Worth because the traffic on Pearson is so bad. So could we just request that that gate not be locked and that it's open and therefore it's, accessible that way?
Well, the
if we so
applicant
choose?
has already, we, as a village, we've already worked with the applicant to allow for him to build Jean Mish Way, I believe it's called, down to 140th. We have worked with him this year to make that happen, but there's been no construction activities.
No,
started
this
now.
is like
You're
if
talking
you.
about
this-
Cressida Way to 140th?
No. There's so when you turn left into the horse show from Pearson, coming from South Shore,
Mm-hmm.
right? You turn left, you go through the gates. The barns are on your left.
Right.
If you keep going, you keep going, you'll eventually come out at Cressida Way.
Right.
And that is 100% accessible by car all the way through.
Understand, and that's the road I'm talking about. We've given him.
Oh, is that the name?
Yeah, that's the name of the road.
Jean Mish Way.
Jean Mish Way.
Oh, okay,
We've
it
given
goes
him
all the way,
approval.
okay.
We've given him approval to build that roadway and to provide for the bridle path scenario that works with that.
But can you say to him that it is a public road and it cannot be locked
It's
and
not-
therefore?
It's not a public road, it's his private road. It's been.
Oh, so he has the ability, and you, okay, so that was going to be my thing, that you can just keep the gate open and we can go.
Well, my wonder is, is can we not let him, the horse show, we can have the horse show, but he gets fined daily? Is that a possibility?
I would suggest to you that, we move through this year and we see what type of activities this year brings, because he has the clock that is now ticking again, so he has time to do this, but the granting of additional extensions has not occurred beyond this point, so we can see what comes about.
How,
Would it be possible?
how many of these permits are open? How many of the permits are we talking about are not finished? 3, 4, 5?
The conditions of approval, you mean?
Yes.
I don't know, actually,
Okay.
but I do know.
But
I
we
do know the
continue
off-site
giving, but we
conditions.
continue giving him another permit and another permit for another project. So
Well, we actually
we
haven't.
Well,
been
the
no
way
other-
that I will try to put a stop to it is say, okay, you are taking advantage of this law, which, is an emergency in North Florida, but at the same time, we are suffering here because of this. So until all these permits are completed, we won't grant you another permit.
I believe, with all due respect to what you're commenting, I believe we've explored about every possibility we can
Okay.
to leverage this. Don't think we haven't. We are frustrated. We want to see it done. In fact, we have other improvements we'd like to make to that intersection as a village, and we'd like to.
What
we'd
could we do as a committee to help?
I think you've explored the things we've explored as well.
Is there any opportunity for us individually to meet with the leadership of the horse show and just try to gain an understanding for what their intentions are as far as moving forward or not moving forward to make this happen, and relay some of the word that we've heard from the community on not only our perspective as individuals attending the show, but from a equestrian community perspective.
I don't know that I would say that it would be any harm.
Yeah, can't hurt, might help.
Can't hurt, yeah.
I wonder if we ought not come up with a, I know the council has explored it, they will have to again, but would it help to have a recommendation from this committee that the permit not be granted without some penalty?
Oh, I wouldn't touch that.
I was thinking carrots, not sticks.
Yeah.
A carrot
I
would
don't
possibly
think
be,
that's going to help
I wouldn't touch that.
with the current turmoil there. I don't. Do they really know what they're going to do?
Yeah, with anything. I would say, though, that, you know, what we talked about before the meeting started, that if, big if, obviously, that road, Jean Mish Way, does in fact become improved and accessible, then you really have to do the traffic light at 120th and Lake Worth.
Okay.
I mean, that you can't have one without the other. I think they have to be lumped together.
so,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's a total traffic management necessity between the private part, which would be the WEF, and then the public part from a village standpoint, which it sounds like the village is already ahead of us on kind of thinking about how best to do that.
can we officially request that when this issue is heard by the council, that we are included?
Sure.
At least invited to attend,
You mean as far as another permit goes?
yes.
Sure, of course.
Because it happens without us and it shouldn't.
No, they're public meetings.
No, but we don't have any involvement in it, and we should.
Um,
Could you give us a notice that it's coming up? Because I have a hard time keeping track of that.
Yeah, we don't,
Provide you the notice, but they
Yeah.
are public meetings.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay. Any other comments on that? I think that's another one that's going to stay on our list. We're only on number one, so hang in there. We got a lot of good comments the other night. The second point Mr. Whitlow made was establishing a conservation area for the preserve. And I know, Annabelle, that's something you've worked on or thought about.
I sent out, I don't know if everybody received it, I sent out the PowerPoint presentation that I put together when
Great.
Hey, you like that?
I
Yeah,
did.
Good, right?
I haven't seen it. I bet everybody else hasn't.
Ryan I believe, sent it to everybody. So I guess I gave it to him, so it's
Okay.
a public record, so
Sure.
he can send it to you. But I worked long and hard on that one, and but sadly, it you know, one of the things that unfortunately, it breaks my heart to say this, is that, you know, there's a lot of money here, but they don't think of Wellington as home. And when people spend their money, they spend it in their home. And I really thought I put together a great group of people, and they were all convinced that it was gonna be easy to raise $30 million. And I think we raised like $1 million. And so obviously with land values where they are, that wasn't going to get very far. And so I was incredible, and even in talking to people about not even raising the money, but even just giving their land in kind, you know, it's not for profit and whatnot.
Does everybody knows here how land trusts work? Yes.
I'm sorry, what did you ask?
Everybody here at this table understands how a land trust works or conservation easement works.
So basically, there are multiple ways of giving land. Just like any other charity, it's set up as a not-for-profit organization, a 501c3. And they are private charities. And these charities can either be gifted money to go out and acquire land on which nothing can ever be done, so it's forever open land. You can be gifted development rights of people's land, so that if the land is sold, that land can still never be developed on, and for which the owner of the land gets a valuation of said property, and then they get a discount on, you know, a tax relief from that donation. And then the alternative is people, you know, donate their land in trust, and again, you get a discount. So there are basically three things: you gift development rights, you gift a piece of land, or you raise money to go out and preserve land. All of which have tax implications positive tax implications for the individual, and obviously huge positive implications for the community. Much of which is increased land value. because A, there's less property to develop on, and B, it's more open land for the community. This is all considered open land, so open to the community. So
And you see it in places like Millbrook.
Millbrook is obviously the one in a million, North Salem, New York,
Yeah.
one in a million.
Yeah.
But you also see it in places like Stewart, and closer to home. And in fact, as you'll see in this presentation, I take a whole bunch of places from Florida on through nationally that basically show that Wellington has the lowest amount of open land to total land. So I mean, it's and if you include the biggest parcel, one of the biggest parcels that they own, which is technically a part owned by South Florida Water Management, but we use it and maintain it, so it's not even ours. So if you were to remove that, it's even a fraction of the number that's there, which is 1.9%.
And the underlying zoning is residential and in many cases more dense than the current use.
The underlying, yes, but also we can't forget that there are many properties. I mean, so far the equestrian community has been incredibly lucky because you've had huge parcels of land go, like the corner of Lake Worth and South Shore,
Right.
and which could have easily been divided into tiny little farms. And I mean, it just, it's not the same feel.
Well, conservation or zoning, preserving the farm properties is always a top priority for this committee. We worked on it with the new zoning code, which is still in the works. Back to Section 6 coming back to us at some point soon. The new Section 6.1, is it? 6.2?
6, 10,
9.
11, and 9. 9, 10, 11, I think it is.
Is it coming back to us soon?
I don't know what soon means, but it may be back to you, yes.
Oh, okay, like the next 6 months.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll continue to talk about that when we see that revised code, which you two haven't seen yet. Let's see, next, other than housekeeping, Carol Coleman talked about traffic on Pearson Road. We talked about that. Comment about environmental impact of manure, which we've talked about. The presentation by Shelley Townsend and Todd Minicus on the recycled shavings. I ended up a little confused about that because there's nothing for the village to respond with on that. We're not going to build a plant. If she builds one, that's fantastic. So, did anybody else
What was
get
her, I didn't understand like she said, I went to Ocala, but she's made it sound like she came to Wellington, but she couldn't build
She
here,
wants,
or-
no, she wants the village to build something and to install her technology that she supposedly has created, or she wants the truckers to go and deliver it to a rail car that she supposedly has lined up, but I haven't seen anywhere that this is in fact has been authorized, because I don't think it's even allowed to go over rails, but I might be incorrect on that. I don't know.
Is Ocala building it for her?
No, she supposedly has a facility there
Oh.
that she, but she
So
won't,
she built, so she wants us to build one for her.
or pay to have it trucked
Did
up
you
or
get
something.
where she was coming from? He knows Shelley better than any of us.
I was trying to save you.
Thanks. You were doing a really good
Oh,
job.
thanks.
So, yeah, she sent out a letter earlier about the rail. So I don't know where obviously there's rail systems in South Florida. We made some inquiries as to where this would be, but I don't really know. Apparently she does have, or is building, or has part of a facility built in Ocala that she could utilize for this material that she can utilize in producing for her plant. She takes the waste material, separates out the actual manure and waste product, and then she treats the shavings in some manner, which she says she has a patent for, and then she repackages it and resells the shavings.
What does she do with the
essentially.
manure part?
She can utilize the manure part in different forms. I mean, it could be that she uses it for waste as a burning product. She can create the bricks out of it, or she can turn it into a fertilizer, different things she could produce with that waste product.
Does she have a plant that is operating up there?
I don't know if the plant is operating in Ocala.
I got the impression she said that it was, but I never heard of it.
I have been to the facility in Kentucky that she had built as a prototype.
Oh, okay.
But from this committee and the village's perspective, if she builds something like that, fantastic. We
Correct.
don't have an issue. We're not involved with the building of it, or even, I mean, personally, we can be customers, but the village wouldn't be a customer. So
No,
I took it as interesting information.
Right. The village's position, I have no direction from council to commit to any kind of product to, produce anything. And I guess the other part of it is, why would the village of Wellington get into producing retail products? That's not our business. It's a private sector business. So-
But the village would support giving if a rail system could be set up, they would support getting proper, same thing as the transfer station, like,
As
you
a
would-
village, we'll support the proper disposal of this
Right,
waste
okay,
product
yeah.
in whatever manner it may be. Whatever proper waste disposal comes out to be, we are in support of that. And not just for the village, but we're also looking at this regionally, because I think
Yeah.
it's larger than just the
Oh, yeah.
village.
I was just going to ask, do you have, because, I take a different opinion on this. I take an opinion that, quite frankly, the council should do something, either as a public-private partnership, but needs to be involved in this, and not just at a helicopter level. And that's, so I may be alone on that, but that's my opinion. But I'm more curious, since Ocala also, they have a horse show and they have a huge racehorse industry and everything else, how their community, or maybe it's just too much bigger than Wellington, I don't know, but how their community and their city council approaches this issue, because they obviously have something quite similar.
I got involved with Marion County because I got interested in how they were working with the equestrians in that area. They have a little different situation because of their watershed. Their groundwater scenarios, where they first came into contact with the pollutants, their phosphorus loadings were picked up in their groundwater. So this goes back about 10 years ago, where they utilized the water supply scenario as a means of governing and getting a handle on the manure disposal. Many of the farms just simply piled the manure on the ground, which then led the phosphorus and the nutrients getting into the groundwater situation, which they then picked up through their wells and through their systems. So that's how they began to become managers of that. They utilized their water supply as a means of managing that. In the village of Wellington, you could say we have a similar situation, but most, if not all now, of our farms have manure bins or some methodology for disposal or handling it in some way. And then we utilize the haulers to move this material. So Ocala had literally hundreds of acres of farmland that they had livestock waste on that was just being stockpiled, and it had been there for decades. So they actually got into a program where they were helping the farm owners turn some of this into from waste product into an energy product. Some of them that were large operations actually grants were funded so that they could utilize that material to produce energy for their farms, and others co-opt, where they set up an energy facility on a farm, but
Who
then
gave the grants?
the Marion County
Marion County
and the
gave the
state of
grants.
Florida, right?
And is there?
And it was all derived from the idea that there was a pollutant affecting their groundwaters.
So
We don't get that?
we have 250,000 tons of manure here annually, which is debatable whether it's affecting our groundwater, in my opinion, because I've seen the runoff from the transfer station is going into the canals, and it's going to the Everglades or wherever, or maybe not our groundwater, but certainly on a state level, you know, the Everglades. So is there a reason that this town, village, cannot work or approach the state of Florida, particularly with a new government that is incredibly pro-environment and Everglades, and come up with a grant program, you know, whatever it is to tackle our problem, which, you know, is not just an individual problem, to either build and operate and charge a tipping fee or whatever it is to the hauler. I mean, or do a public-private partnership with the haulers with state, local funds?
I think, getting back to, you know, the comparison of Marion County, they're working with large farm owners, and they're dealing with large properties up there that were disposing of their waste within their property, so using it as a farm operation.
Understood.
Wellington, with our smaller farm operations and our disposal methodologies that we have a BMP program in our village. It says that you're going to put your manure in a bin, in a concrete structure, and it's going to be hauled out, or you're going to compost it in some way on your property. That's our methodology for disposal. I'm not sure the state of Florida, and may be wrong, but I'm not sure the state of Florida is going to amend its regulations to accommodate just Wellington. If they're going to amend the regulations for livestock waste, this is going to affect the entire state. It's not just Wellington. Now, you can carve Wellington out, but that takes more legislative activity. So I think your farm interest that you're looking at is not, you're looking at Wellington as being part of the farm interest, but there's a larger, huge farm interest statewide.
Sure, but it's mostly cattle.
And a very strong lobbyist at that. So I think taking on the problem that we have here, you know, right now we've worked through, you have private sector haulers working with you as private landowners that are disposing of this through our best management practices in locations that are approved for disposal. That's a far cry from where we were 10 years ago. You have thousands of acres of land right now that have received a nutrient management plan for the disposal of the waste on their lands as a farm product. We have other interests right now that are being developed that may come online in the next year to 18 months that'll have another methodology for disposal. So there are different opportunities here.
And you'll keep us posted month to month as they come up.
As things happen, sure.
This may be on our agenda every single month.
It should be.
Yeah. Any other comments on this particular facet of it? Okay. The next comment was from the gentleman. I could not get his name. Christy, you're going to remember him. This is the one that makes the comment about us being aware of competition both statewide, nationally, and internationally.
Oh, yeah, the Dutch guy.
What's his name?
Oh, God, I can't remember right now.
He always
Yeah, I
has
know.
very good feedback.
Yeah. No, he comes every year.
He again made that point, and he was very positive about our State of the Industry report. Talked about whether we should count stalls, look at the supply and the demand of stalls. I think if we just get the numbers, start with the numbers of the attendees, we've got it better than we were. But he's an interesting person that we ought to stay involved with. He always has interesting comments, don't you think? Let's see, the next person talked about, if you remember, the cane was burning at a high rate that night. So he was talking about the water quality in the county and the burning of the fields and so on and so forth. Finishing the trail on Trotter and Draft. Mike, you were going to look into that.
Well, that trail, that's the Brown Trail, and that trail ends at the end of Trotter Court. It was platted that way. There are, Ryan and I looked at it the other day, there are no trails that go up into the northern part of Paddock Park 2. It wasn't, the property wasn't platted that way, so that trail, in fact, does end. And like any other trail, there's a beginning and there's an end, and that's the, you can say it's either the beginning or the end of the Brown Trail, but that's on the eastern portion of Paddock Park 2. That is the Brown Trail that turns into, that comes down, and that's why we made the connection through, I think it was the C10 canal. C11 canal. We put in the culvert so that horses could cross over and then come on down to Big Blue Trace. Wellington Trace, Wellington Trace, and then get on the Blue Trail to go into the showgrounds. That was the missing link there that made that trail useful to those residents to the north. There is an a western portion of the Brown Trail which ties into the Red Trail, which is along the C2 canal. So that was the only piece that was missing.
Okay. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to. I encourage all the rest of you, we ought to get out of those trails. If we don't, I know, Glenn, you use them. You may be the only one at this table. Do you, right?
I don't.
You don't, Rachel, do you?
Actually, that's not true. I use the one that
I
goes
used
down
to.
our
Yeah.
firehouse.
Yeah.
And I use the one, I don't know if it's actually a trail. If you go down 140th Street to the Everglades, there's that long piece. I don't know that's amazing.
That's the White Trail, and
That's the
yes,
White
it
Trail.
goes out. And the only, that's another one that is not completed. There's in order to
Dead
tie,
end, and you
right, a
turn
dead
around.
end. Well, it is, the intention there would be to cross over Flying Cow Road to get you onto, into Section 24 to be able to ride around the area in Section 24, which is a bridle path area as well. So the destination for that end of that trail would be to cross over Flying Cow Road.
I would never go that far, but it was, no, because it's, well, by the time you go, I mean, we do it as just a different form of exercise for our horses and every day in the ring, so it's not like we want to go for hours like,
Right.
around, so, you know.
Right.
But,
Well, and
but it's beautiful. I'm just saying it's just beautiful.
well, and the bulk of the trail system serves the horse show. It's like a jumper show. And I'll say this again too, that park on Flying Cow is so wonderful for horses, for riding.
Yeah.
We need to go.
You're just trying to get me killed.
Okay, the next speaker was Justin Hickey, and that again that night the hot topic was the transfer station on 50th, and he gave us a nice report on how he handles that and where the truckers are going to the cane fields. What's the latest on that transfer station?
It's up and operating, as most of you know. I believe from the communication I've had with the operator that there has been at least 4 different agencies have been out looking at the property. There has been no violations that I've been made aware of. In fact, Palm Beach County Health Department was on the property, the Army Corps of Engineers, FDEP, and the Sheriff's Environmental Unit was on the property. No, to my understanding from my communications with the operator, there's been no violations noted.
Do we know how many of the local haulers is using it?
My understanding that all of the haulers
All
are
the
using it.
haulers, huh?
And we are getting the load counts from that facility. So what that does for us is it helps us kind of understand what's going on in the industry as well. Kind of what we've been doing is, as you may know, since 2012, we've been keeping track of the number of stalls, permanent stalls in the village, to the best of our ability. And what we've been able to do is track that number. And what we've been trying to keep an eye on and trying to answer the question is how many horses are in Wellington during and after season. So having these volumes of waste is a methodology for us to start giving you those ideas of those numbers. Ryan's been actually putting together the computations that kind of give us an idea of how the horses flow in and flow out of Wellington during the year. And this is a way of us managing that and giving an idea how that works.
Any other new news on the transfer station? The next gentleman that spoke was talking about 50th, because we learned that the haulers are coming out of the transfer station out 50th up Flying Cow and west. What is the situation on 50th? I think he was saying more grading needed to happen, but it's what is that truck traffic doing to 50th?
Yeah, I think especially the rains this particular season had an impact on that roadway. I have reached out to the manager of that particular facility, and we've agreed that we will meet and come up with an alternative solution to that. Obviously, we need to come up with some methodologies for grading it and for managing it during wet conditions.
Are they still going to use that route?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
But we need to come up with a management plan that works for both of us. You know, they need to stay in operation, and we need to keep the road working as well. So,
Goodness gracious. I know so much better than that. So we need to, and have you gotten any neighborhood feedback on along 50?
not anything more than what I have been receiving. No, I have the same feedback that we've been getting, but that's
Nothing new.
nothing new.
Okay. Everybody chime in if I'm missing anything.
You're doing great.
Tried to take good notes. I'm the secretary here. The next person to speak was Jose Gomez with Wellington Agricultural, and he sounds like he's got a new methodology coming, but we didn't hear the details about that. I suspect once he has them, he'll come to you, or do you know more about it, Mike?
Yeah, I expect that Mr. Gomez, as he works through his plan, will hear more about it. I mean, obviously, as I said earlier, we're supportive of methodologies for disposal, proper disposal. Volume reduction is one of those methodologies. Ryan and I have explored, you know, what happens if X percentage of the farms were able to dispose of their waste on their property. I believe what Mr. Gomez has presented is a method for that to happen. The technologies have been, for these type of things, has been consistently improving on a year-by-year basis since we've been involved in this process, and some of them are still in the prototype stage. Others are being more mass marketed, and we're hearing more about them as well.
So he was talking about something that would convert the livestock waste to biofuel.
Correct.
Is he,
well, I think more of to a compost, if I remember.
is it operational yet, or just an idea, or?
No, I believe he has a company. As I understand it, the presentation that I think he was making to us was that the technology was developed out of Canada, and the firm that he was working with has that ability to bring that facility here, or that type of operation here, to your individual farms.
Okay, so how do we find out about that?
It would be up to him to bring that forward.
Is that something, it seems like that's something we ought to hear about.
He has an open invitation to come here when
He was here earlier.
Right, and he had
yeah.
told me he was also, if you were aware, he did a kind of a luncheon at the showgrounds where he expressed some of the things that he was working on. As I understand it from that luncheon, that he would, once he's comfortable with this technology and the things that he's working on, he'll be bringing that forward.
Do we agree that if there's any news or new idea or new operation, that we would like to hear about it anytime, any meeting?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yes.
So can we just say livestock waste removal is going to be on our agenda every single meeting, and if there are new ideas and new operations, anything, we want to be kept current about it. So help us with that, Mike. And then we only had one more, and that was the neighbor for the transfer station. And
I have a question about
Yes.
that, actually. When you talk about BMPs, Mike, I believe you said that they were supposed to operate within certain hours, and then you kind of went back. That was like the original agreement, but then you kind of went back on that and said, well, actually, you have no authority. It's like, like you have actually no authority to, but you were hoping they would. Is that correct?
Well, the operation itself,
The operation, the times.
right, the time frame, doesn't necessarily fall under the BMPs, but what we were talking to them about was the idea of trying to work with them on a operational plan that would be satisfactory to both them and to the community.
And have you come up with that?
Well, I think what's happened in the last, I think what we had is the initial startup, if I could go back to December, the latter part of December, that startup and how that operation ran then versus how it's running now. I think there was a learning curve for the haulers themselves to reshuffle their programs as well. And I think you've seen a lot of that happen over the last couple of months. I don't know.
But is there an official hours of operation?
I think the official hours of operation is what they would see as their operating plan. I mean, I don't have any ability to really tell them, this is.
That's my question. So
Right.
we have no ability to
No.
tell them times, days, whatever. Because the other
But they
night I
are.
was driving home and I was too tired to kind of stop and take a picture and everything else. But I just kind of stood out there and was like, okay, it's pitch black. It was 10 o'clock at night and it was still going. So that was.
I don't know that I've seen that operation.
I haven't seen that on a regular basis, but it was still.
I think, in all fairness
going
to
on.
them as well, and you as a farm owner should understand this as well, and that is that there are certain times during the season, Mondays and Tuesdays specifically, that's when most of the farms want their manure bins emptied. So the haulers are the most busiest on those 2 days of the week. And I think that we're learning as we go through this that those type of activities are going to be part of the season. I think the operation itself is also understanding that there are those peak times when they need to have additional vehicles ready to move things in and out so that things are happening. I think there's been a fair amount of learning through this whole process.
All I'm going to say, and I'm saying it, for the record, whatever, is that there's kind of been a trajectory that I don't particularly like, which is when I moved here permanently, it was the village with its thumb doing that to any farm owner. That was actually not within their legal right, but we either didn't hire lawyers or this or that, and whatever. Now it's gone to a point where we had a lawsuit that was lost by the village by a particular farm owner, and the village coming to us as a committee saying, well, we want to ask you to give up your rights as ag exempt, so to speak, so that we can regulate this industry because, farms are being built improperly and this and that and whatever. And I think we as a committee, we never got to us per se. So I'm guessing when you met with us individually, all had some kind of pushback to that. And now it feels like this has gone from over here to over here, where we're just going to let everybody operate the way they feel like operating until we kind of acquiesce to the village wanting, until us wanting to give up our agricultural freedoms so that you can say, oh, well, now we can regulate you. And I just there is a part of me that kind of says that this doesn't feel like it would have happened the way it's going on now, the way this transportation is operating a few years ago.
Because all the laws changed. The Farm Act totally changed. I mean, I was part of when I tried to build 10 years ago, I met huge opposition because that's what the law was saying, but now the laws have changed and they're working for the farm owner. So it's not that the village did anything wrong, it's the state changed the laws.
The village has acted differently too, 100%.
Well, I think the village was forced to act differently because of the state laws.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of how we've gotten here, we haven't talked about this tonight, but that whole presentation of 604.5 is important because where we are right now is it's been established through the evolution of the law, and then the challenge of the law, the challenge of the administration of the regulations in Wellington, that now it's really clear that state statute prevails, so.
Maybe, but none of it supersedes environmental, and I think we have a huge environmental issue, and nobody wants to kind of address that or go after that.
No, we do, with the
attempt.
water runoff, we do.
South Florida water management.
We do manage that. Talk about water management, because that is exactly where we can control it,
Yeah.
but that's all.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's left for the village to work with is our best management practices and our water quality. That's it.
But the water quality.
But in terms of, but we can also do it off the canals. It doesn't have to be individual waters. It can also be off of the runoff into the canals.
And each farm that's out there permitted today has a discharge level and water quality scenarios with it.
But I'm seeing it in the canals,
I don't know what.
off the transfer station, the manure.
You're seeing a discharge that is legal. Your farm, just like everybody else's farm, once your farm exceeds the amount of rainfall that it can handle through its system. it
No,
will then
I'm saying I
discharge.
see the manure from being flown and everywhere and like whatever in the canals.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with you. You saw what you saw. I mean,
But let's,
But-
let's,
but the-
let's-
But my point
but
is,
the-
if that's the case, right, why can't we, bring South Florida Water Management in to, kind of test those canals that are essentially running
we
off
test
into
the waters every day. We test the waters every time there's a rain event. We test
Yeah,
waters.
but there's no rain event usually in the wintertime, which is when manure is the highest.
We've had a tremendous
So-
amount of rain this winter.
So
No, we haven't. We've been so lucky with the weather. I mean, I can attest to it. When it has rained, those 2 times in the last couple of months, it rained a lot, but we haven't.
I had my stalls flood this winter. That never happens.
We've been counting our blessings how little rain there has been. Like,
well, either.
we've
but
had a fairly wet
Yeah.
season.
Either way, the village has a way of
Just checking it,
monitoring the water runoff from each property. So you can't, that's the one thing that we can control. And if you want to explain how to do that, we do that, but we do it. And the phosphorus levels fluctuate widely in the year because of the season. Happily, they measure us on an annual basis, not a month to month.
Well, I'm thinking maybe they should measure us on a month to month.
I
Maybe
don't
we'll
think,
actually-
I
You don't want that.
I don't think
Well-
you're going to like
Those values.
the
Maybe it'll force our hand to do something.
I would suggest that maybe you need to understand, the TMDs on that, because I'm not sure this village, nor you, or the village
Okay.
themselves is ready to take on that responsibility. That's a huge cost.
Yeah, they're not going to just punish the transfer station. They're going to punish all of us. So if you want to change the
It's all
rules,
of our problem.
So-
Right? It's all of our problem, and we just sit here and continuously, as Scott Swerland, who said it, kick the can down the road. It's Groundhog Day, over and over and over again. And as I've said, the town needs to, also step up to solve the problem. It's not just the farm owners, and so does the farm owners. I mean, an environmental issue is an environmental issue. It's not an environmental, just because it's not an environmental issue in June, doesn't make it not one that we should be concerned about.
So the
talk to us about
discharge
how it
levels,
works.
the discharge levels from your farm are 1 inch per day at 10 parts per billion. That's what you would be meeting every day. Every time there's a rain event, that's what you would be allowed to discharge, 1 inch per day at 10 parts per billion. I don't know of any farm in Wellington that'll meet that requirement.
Okay, and what would be the solution to meeting it?
There are
Rid of horses?
chemical methods for that. Alum treatment plants. There are probably some other technologies out there today that will clean your water from your farm. There's probably other things, but it will cost you money to do that.
or reduce the horse number.
Yeah,
I mean, those are the options. They're not great options, and fortunately for us, we're not on a per day basis. We're on an average, and so are you. And so your discharge levels are based on an average over the year.
and we
because
barely
because
make
of
it.
the
Yeah.
winter months,
Sure. And
right?
by the end, because the season's getting longer and longer, we're not gonna make it. So we better start coming up with a solution, 'cause
Well,
it's gonna be
but
coming
by the
for us.
time, by the winter months that we've had and the dry season we go through, and then you average that out with the wet season we go through, we manage to meet those criteria.
But it's an issue across Wellington. It's every farm. It's not just that transfer station.
So in a way, another sort of way to frame this would be just thinking out loud. If we came up with, as a committee, either a subgroup or the entire committee, tapping the resources of the village and the community and even the broader community, a solution or a couple of alternative solutions that were, potentially viable, then we could at that point figure out what it would take to execute them. But what I hear is, we're monitoring, we're learning, we're understanding, but we haven't moved from that to saying, okay, here's a recommendation as to a solve. And I'm wondering if that's something we want to tackle. Because, what I'm hearing you say, Annabelle, is, it'd be good for the village to step up and own the problem. And what I'm wondering...
At least part of the problem.
Oh, yeah, or part of it. Because the village certainly gets part of the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But to the degree that we could come up with a recommendation, working with the staff on a possible solve or a couple of possible solves, then we could figure out, that would be kind of the first step. Here's a solution. Here's why it's an effective solution. Here's the way it would work. And then the issue is, how do we go about executing it? And if it would take resources from the village, either money or land or people resources, we could say, here's how we would here's how we'd recommend engaging those resources.
I guess
And
my
that-
question
that'd
is
be one
what
approach.
solutions are you looking for? I mean, the village, I know Mike has pretty much been committed from the time I've met him to solve this problem.
I want
So they
dollars.
won't, like you said, the village isn't going to start getting into building plants, but they've managed it with the best management practices, the best that they can. And, you're not going to take, you can't turn your horses out anymore because the manure is contaminating the canals. I mean, you can't solve that problem. They're solving the manure regulations as much as they can. And over the last 10 years, they've dramatically improved the way that the manure has been handled. When I joined this committee, people were still spreading manure. So to add another committee to a committee, I think the village, has stepped up as far as monitoring and trying to solve the manure problem. So my question is, what is it that you're trying to solve that they haven't already
I'd like to
worked
see
on?
dollars.
Dollars of what?
Dollars of what?
I'd like to see dollars from the, look, if they're going to spend millions of dollars to move a tennis, facility from one place to the other, I'd like to see them put dollars into, doing something in terms of a manure, a proper, sound, a transfer station that's not open air.
Okay, hang on. We just keeping everything straight here. We got two conversations going on. There's manure, livestock waste disposal, and there's water runoff. They're different.
Yeah, but
They're different. You got to take the livestock waste and do something with it, and we're going to recycle shavings, or we're going to take it to the glades, or we're going to come up with bricks, or whatever it is. And there could be a plant that converts it to biofuel or solid waste, or that's a whole chapter of conversation. And on the other side, we have 604.5, the state saying we can't regulate anything when it comes to ag use, except water runoff. So over here on water runoff, we can make sure that you are holding your water properly, and then when it comes off of the property, it's the phosphorus levels are checked. So they're different. That's a property by property water management that the village does in cooperation with South Florida Water Management System. So just don't confuse them, because they're separate. And this water management is our only regulatory authority on the farms in Wellington anymore. That's it. We can't control setbacks. We can't control buildings. But no, you can't, because of the water management.
Well, assuming you stay within that, you could.
Mike, help me out here. That's the only thing they can't do that. You can build a covered arena, you can put a dumpster right by somebody's bedroom on the property line, you can put 50 horses on 2 acres, but you can't contaminate the water.
Right, understood, but you technically could spread manure all over your property if.
That would contaminate the water.
Well, you can get a manure spreading permit if you compost the manure. And if you show us that the nutrient management plan that you would have to apply for, your lands could handle the property, just like what the U.S. Sugar people did. That's exactly what they went through. They went through a nutrient management plan to show what their farms could to take as far as the load goes.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You would need to do the same
Right.
thing.
So, still spreading. It's just,
Well, you'd have to compost it as well. So there's an operation for you to deal with.
And you've only got so much land. That's the only thing we've got.
I mean, I think where we are is we are in a much better place than what we were 10 years ago. I think that, having our name in the paper on a regular basis as piles of manure went all around the county in different locations was not a good thing for us as a village. We have, on the last 4 or 5 years, I don't think we've had a complaint of illegal dumping that I'm aware of that we've been actually able to trace back to the village of Wellington. And I think we've educated not only ourselves, but the haulers. I think the haulers themselves have realized that, this is a serious scenario, and they need to take proper disposal of it seriously, and I think they're doing that. We've also had a good partner with regards to U.S. Sugar stepping up and allowing and taking on the responsibility of doing the right thing by permitting their properties for disposal. All of that has helped. We also know that the Solid Waste Authority has been able to take some of it, but they're not in it for the long haul. They've made that clear to us. They're interested in burning garbage, not manure, but they've been taking some of it, and that's been helpful as we've gone through this process. And now we have hopefully in the next 18 months or so, we might have another technology coming on board that could handle some of it as well. And maybe that's another way of disposal. And some of the opportunities we hear now about some even disposal on your farm operations.
Yeah, and the village would, if I could do it on my farm, I have the property,
Right.
that
so
would be like
technology
huge.
that's coming that wasn't available 10 years ago or was cost prohibitive 10 years ago may be something we may be able to support in the next 5 to 10 years. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that really the laws have changed, the state standards have changed, and we are down to our best management practices and controlling our water quality. And as a village, I think we do a pretty good job of managing that for you all. But I don't think you're going to like the idea of managing it yourself, because I don't think you're going to be able to do it. And that would be a burden on all of us, not just you as a farm owner. That goes village-wide.
I'm grateful for the village doing it.
I mean, we've spent over $40 million to correct a good chunk of this problem. And now we stand here today with the regulations as we have them. We are in compliance with our permits today. And as long as the rules and regulations don't change on us, we're good to go. We can manage our water. We can take care of our situation. But we're monitoring the things that are coming at us.
Okay. You got to go, but let me go ahead. That's all of our comments from the March meeting. Does anybody else have anything to add? Going forward, I am hearing we've got the same projects, and we're going to be talking about manure every single meeting, and you're going to keep us updated. We're going to keep up with the education committee and make sure we work over the summer and have that program ready to go, so it's going at the start of the school year. So we're going to start on it now. the state of the industry. Annabelle's taking part of it. You're taking the other part of it. We're all
Yeah,
going to work on it.
I'll reach out. Yeah, like I said, the USDF seemed pretty open to anything.
And I think we're going to probably be talking about 604.50 along the way too. And the new zoning code is coming back to us, section 6.9, 10, and 11.
Yeah. Are we going to finish that this summer?
Yes.
Okay.
So speaking of summer, we don't have any big land use issues coming to us that I know of anytime soon. We just have this work. So do we want to meet monthly or less than that?
I have one other subject that
Yes.
I would like to bring forward to you that has been and is part of your plan of action as well, and that's golf carts. Even
Like-
though
it's almost like
one of the
manure.
subjects, right?
It just keeps coming back.
Even though the subject, we've somewhat touched upon it this a little bit here with our road crossing scenario. Golf carts, we did touch on it, I think, at a couple meetings ago. We talked about the trails.
We've really just never dug into
Yeah,
it.
you kind of touched on it, but I wanted to make reference to that fact that maybe that's something else you want to add to your list.
I will.
Do you have any statistics on, since you passed that rule, that, you can make your golf cart road legal? Like, have a lot of people done it or participating
Well,
in it?
I
or-
do know that we see a lot of golf carts out there that are street legal.
Really? Okay.
I'm seeing lots of tags on vehicles.
Okay.
So I think the equestrians are taking that seriously, that they
Okay.
are making their vehicles street legal. So I think that's and there was a report that there's been somewhat of a decrease in the rentals at the showgrounds. I don't know that. Maybe more people buying their carts, I don't know. But I think golf carts are something that, as a committee, you need to kind of step into a little bit here because it is on village-wide. It is an issue for us village-wide, but more importantly, I think the brief discussion that we had here a while back was, the bollards went up, so that was to minimize the golf cart usage. So the next plan that was, for the action, there's a reaction. Well, the reaction was to buy the scooters. And so the scooters are rampant. So now the question is, are the scooters okay, or do you want to go back to golf carts? And, you can see that there are portions of the community which are highly utilized by golf carts and scooters, all pretty much around the showgrounds. But as Carlos, I think we've had this discussion, the southern portion along some of the roadways and that are not a problem. People respect the horses and the golf cart usage, and so there are portions of the community that don't have a real issue with golf carts. So I would recommend as a committee that you put that on your to-be-discussed list.
Has there been any more accidents since there's more golf carts that are street legal that you're aware of?
I don't know that.
Okay.
We've had conversations with the sheriff's department about enforcing state statutes, which goes back to, if you're really not going to like that, that's solution either.
So we'll talk about that.
I was just curious, what happened to the one on Pearson in the school bus? Do you know?
No, I don't. I
Okay.
believe he was obviously injured, but all I know is from what I've read in the papers that her life is not threatened by it. She's badly injured, but that's about as far as I can go. It's still under investigation as far as I know.
So we'll talk about golf carts at the next meeting. We have a mandatory meeting in June, right?
Yes.
So we have quarterly meetings that we have to have. And then we can meet in May, or we can wait till June. Any opinions?
I'd like to see us do the quarterly through the summer, just from a personal standpoint.
Knowing that if we have a land use issue comes up, there's no choice.
What's that?
If there's a land use issue that comes to us,
Understand.
we meet.
Yeah, then we meet.
Yeah.
Just going back to the schools, I definitely would like to make sure that some of the school things get taken care of before school starts.
We have to.
So, and then I don't know if everybody got a copy of this, but I sent Ryan a copy of a letter from Ann Caroline that she had written about WEF and what WEF does for the local schools and what they've been doing. So I just don't know if anybody
I didn't
received
get it.
No.
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw it, okay.
Did that come out?
I have to check.
It was, I can send it back to you again.
Okay, thank you.
So if we could get it as a committee, that'd be great.
Do we have to go back to do we need to go back to that education committee? Probably, yes.
From what I got here, it sounds like what we need to do is, we need to work with the Community Services Department
Okay.
and come up with a specific date and times for the polo activities to occur. We need to figure out the logistics of how we're going to get the students from the schools to the polo fields and make those things kind of happen,
Is
or
that-
vice versa.
Can community,
Is that an option, Carlos?
Yeah, we can go to the schools, but remember, we only have 2 or 3 more weeks of polo
No, I understand.
Next year.
Yeah, it might be.
for next year.
Yeah.
can we have community services come to one of our meetings?
Well, let us work with them to come up with the program
Okay.
of how we're going to actually implement this. And I think I'm hearing from this conversation that either getting the students to the polo fields or vice versa, that's something we need to come up with.
I've spoken with one of the elementary school principals and
Uh-huh.
one of the middle school principals, and they've been open to doing something for next year and making sure they can put it together.
Okay.
So that if the polo will pay for the buses, they'll be happy to make a day so
Yeah.
that the kids can go out and,
Okay.
and be on it. So they're getting me more information also.
Great, okay, fine, thank you.
So why don't we meet in May and aim to talk about golf carts and the school program, among other things? That all sound good?
That'll work.
Any other comments? Meeting's adjourned.
I have
Thank you very
one.
much. Yeah, oh, yes.
This horse sense flyer, I was asked to distribute this. There's a seminar at Wellington Library Wednesday, April 17th at 6:30 p.m. They're asking for pre-registration. Call 561-790-6070.
And this is
Fine.
University,
Yes, I have.
there's some of
Yeah,
the,
pass
at
it
the
on, pass
outside
it
too. This is the University of Florida Ag Office.
The IFAS extension, they'll be talking about native plants. It's Adrian Deutsch, program assistant for the Native Canopy Education Program, and former dressage competitor.
Thank you. Okay, great, thank you. All right, good night. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned.